Have you guys ever seen one GM drop 4 brilliancies on another GM in one game? This game is fantastic. White played at a 99.8% accuracy. This features Gennady, GM Gennady with the white pieces, 2540, versus Attila with the black pieces, 2518, and it was played in 1990. So let's get into it. Well, as you could see, it's a Sicilian. Now you could see it is an open Sicilian. We got d6, d4, the main line, that infamous trade. Knight to f6, attacking the pawn on e4, and knight to c3, defending the pawn on e4. There is a bunch of theory in this game, but then black goes south and it turns into an absolute monstrous attack by white. Pawn to e5. Okay, we've discussed this move at length in the past. What does it do? It gains a tempo on the knight, controls the center, and numbs f4, right? f4 is a move white wants to play in the middle game or the opening if he plays the Grand Prix, but typically in the middle game if he plays the open Sicilian. So that's what's good about it for black. What's bad about it? Well, d5 becomes an outpost for white. What is an outpost? As you can see, this e pawn has been overextended and there is no c pawn, so there's no pawn that can kick out a piece that lands on d5. That is an outpost. d6 is also a backwards pawn. What is that? It's a pawn that cannot be pushed because it'll get taken. So those are the weaknesses. So black's middle game idea is he has to try to play d5 and get rid of his one weakness in the position, and then e5 will be justified. We get bishop e7, castles, and king h1, a prophylactics. Point of this is you want to play f4 and not deal with this check later on. In some cases, you could go rook g1 and strike with g4. There's been many Fischer games like that, right? It's the same as king h8 and rook g8. So those are very cool attacks that happen sometimes. Pawn to b5, typical Sicilian ideas, knight to d5, jumping into the outpost. Black takes with the knight. Now you could take either way. He elects to take with the queen, gaining a tempo here on this rook. We get rook a7, bishop to e3, gaining another tempo on this rook. Here it looks like black's position is on the back foot, but now he plays very actively, and to be honest, early on I did prefer black's position. Bishop to e6, this kicks the queen, and now we get rook to d7. This is the screenshot position I love that black got. He's ready to play d5, at which point his position will really explode and be very open. However, he goes wrong here very shortly. Pawn to a4, putting pressure on this queenside set of pawns. We get pawn to b4. He don't want to take and have a weak a pawn for the rest of the game, so that's understandable. And white finally struck with f4. At this point, black should really play f6 or d5, create some space for the bishop, or strike in the center. You're ready to strike. Instead, we get queen c7. First mistake of the game that he will live to regret. I don't know why he did this. Maybe he wanted to double up the rooks. Maybe he wanted to tie down white's queen, but it's a little too slow. We get f5, and black has two options right now. Can either remove this knight and double up the pawns, though that would give white the open c file, or he can play what he played, bishop c4. He's like, I don't want any light squared holes when you have a light squared bishop, so let's trade light squared bishops. Now what should white do? I think most people would play knight to d2, gaining a tempo on the queen and protecting the pawn, which is not a bad move, but there's better, as you could see. Pawn to f6. This reminds me in those Dragon vs. Yugoslav games where black sacks the rook on c3 when white is castled queenside to open up this attack, right? Kingside, f6 is the same score as c3 queenside. So this strikes and it creates a lot of pressure. Black does take it. White sacks the rook. We get brilliancy number 1. The point of this is you give up the exchange, but you weaken the dark squares and you open up a route of attack towards black's king. Now what to do? Well, do not go bishop h6, allowing the rook in. Go queen h4, right? Not allowing the rook in because queen takes f6, pin, checkmate. Queen to e6, okay, defending that weak square here on f6, and we get brilliancy number 2. This is probably my favorite one of the game. You know, queens and knights make the best checkmating patterns. Routing this knight over hits the queen and allows it to then jump on the outpost on f5 if it's not taken. What if it is taken? Well, then you get bishop takes e5, and there's just no way. See, this is a perfect example of poor pawn structure leading to a collapsing position. We're going to get bishop takes f6 and checkmate. Or you're going to be up a queen, but it's not about that. It's about the fact that black's king is just in a box, and they're going to get checkmated. Oh, why did I do that? I apologize. We will be back shortly. Stay tuned. All right, knight to d4. So we get queen to e7, knight to f5, jumping into the outpost, right? No g pawn, no e pawn to kick out the knight. And this queen is going to get bullied for like the next 8 moves. Rook to f1, bringing all the pieces into the attack, right? This is a lonely king, and none of black's pieces can coordinate around his poor pawn structure to protect his king. He strikes with d5 finally, but it's too little too late, to be honest. We get knight to g7, brilliancy number 3. Why can black not take this knight? Well, if he takes the knight, we're going to get bishop check. If king g8, we would get checkmate. If king h8, you take the rook, and then you're going to checkmate them. Why did I do that? I apologize, guys. I hope that doesn't make you guys click off, but it happens. Okay, so that's why he did not take the knight. So we get queen e7. Now we get bishop c5. This is a very accurate brilliancy, right? This means he was on his game because this is precision at its finest. Why can the queen not take the bishop? The queen did take the bishop, in fact. But it's losing because of this move, knight h5. Essentially, you're threatening checkmate. He has to defend the pawn. Okay, computer's glitching. This is not equal. And then we get knight to f6. Knight takes f6, threatens mate in 1. And black resigned. Because his only move is queen takes. You get queen takes, and you get a rook lift. So, yeah. Life is good for white in this game. Pretty crazy game. Have you guys ever seen it? 4 brilliancies, 1 game. Amazing. Thank you guys, as always, for watching. Have a great day. Boom.